Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about the meta purpose of the adventurer. Our player characters in Dungeons and Dragons are adventurers. Why? Why do we play adventurers? Right? You could scuttle off to the right or the left and find out some other D&D commentator, and they'll say, oh well, it's a fantasy setting, so you're going to play an adventurer. I don't think that's the case. So, in my humble opinion, in 1974. Gary Gygax did not create a game. He created a human improvement engine, and he disguised it as a game. Okay, I think that disguise is still happening today. It's happening under Wizards of the Coast today. His legacy of building a human improvement engine, Dungeons and Dragons' position to aid humanity, is still happening today. Two pieces of recent evidence. Ray Winninger, right? He can see him right on YouTube, and he says, "Oh yeah, there is." He's talking to Todd Kenrick, and he goes, "Oh yeah, there's a rule. It says, hey, Vecna, when he dies, he will come back 100 years later. And then he goes, wink, wink. What we really meant is you can bring him back whenever you want, right? So he's talking about the rules of Dungeons and Dragons, and he's saying the rules is written. The literal words do not mean what they say. Look deeper. The current design lead for Dungeons & Dragons is telling you, we write things in the book, but you got to read between the lines to find the real purpose. Look at Dragonlance Warriors of Krynn, okay? Dragonlance Warriors of Krynn was specifically built to process a simple slice of the mass combat in Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, right? The real purpose of Dragonlance Warriors of Krynn is to serve as a token set to allow dungeon masters to process mass combat when it occurs within the narrative story of Dragonlance, a 250-page book, right, which has incredibly complex narrative structure, right? And what they're going to do is they're going to take that product and they're going to sell it to muggles who don't have any idea what its true purpose is. They're going to play it like a board game because they think it's a board game, right? There are things hidden in Dungeons and Dragons. They're hidden in plain sight, right? If you open your eyes, in my humble opinion. So Gary Gygax's legacy of disguising Dungeons and Dragons, saying this is a game, but it's actually a human improvement engine. There's a long storied history of it, and I think it's happening with Wizards of the Coast even today, right? And like the two guys, in the prom in Strixhaven, right? They're like, oh, here's a 1-page fantasy picture, right? But that isn't about Strixhaven. It's about telling you, hey, we want love is love to be true. We want all Americans, no matter what their orientations, no matter what their genders are, to be able to love each other, right? It's hidden in plain sight, but it's a direct attempt to change the world, right? Dungeons and Dragons has been attempting to change the world from 1974 to today, right? And people all over they either don't see it or they deny seeing it because they're desperately worried that if they engage with Dungeons and Dragons, they will be fundamentally changed as themselves. They will need to learn new language. They will need to learn tolerance, all kinds of things, and it terrifies grognards all over the country, right? My favorite West Coast grognard included, right? So basically, why do we play adventurers, right? So here's my humble opinion. I think Gary put player characters as created adventurers as the primary vessel for player characters because he knew we were going to need them. Why do we need adventurers today? There's a very, very real need for adventurers in our Dungeons and Dragons games today. And the reason why is we've reached this incredibly strange occurrence in our society, in American society, that I think Gary Gygax saw coming and that I think Wizards of the Coast design team still sees now, right? And what is that? It's the macro failure of institutions, right? So basically, right now, you see this all over, right? Things that so we have laws on the books, right? And the biggest one is justice, right? I think in America we've reached a point where everybody knows it's justice for some, and the vast majority of people, it's not justice for you, right? Recently, I had my bike stolen. I had a beautiful Trek bike. Bought it for $600. I put about $400 into it. It was about a $1,000 bike, right? And it was stolen. It was stolen right from next to my house, right? I didn't call the police because I knew. I had a buddy who had just last month lost an entire car. Police didn't care. They were like, if we find it, we'll give you a call. It was so clear there was going to be no justice for him, right? There's going to be, no one was going to hunt down the culprits, right? There was going to be no justice, right? So we've arrived in a world where, and take a look at Canada, right? Even on the American continent, this extends, right? There was a stabbing spree, right? Look what happened. The Justice Society, the law was supposed to capture them and bring them in alive and put them under trial for what they did. You know what happened? Oh, hey, we found one. They're dead. Oh, hey, we found another one. We captured him. Ooh, a few minutes after we captured him, he's dead. Is that justice? Right? Is that somebody going through the process and the law, giving everybody their due process? No. And again, it's just justice for some. But here we are on the Dungeons and Dragons side. Now we know vigilantism is not correct. But what about adventurers? What about people who go out and quest and accomplish things in the world, and sometimes their actions result in justice? They're not part of any organization. They're not part of any institution. Are there humans that can achieve justice outside of institutions? There are in our Dungeons and Dragons games, and you have literally 10 to 20 million of the most charismatic, confident, intelligent people in the world telling stories with adventurers, saying, how do we bring justice but beyond the utility of an institution, because no institution works. I'll give you an example, right? Neverwinter and Phandalin. Mount Hotenau is about 100 miles north, right? There's a green dragon by canon in multiple stories in Dungeons & Dragons that lives there. Phandalin, Neverwinter never sends the city guard to kill it, right? It's up to adventurers, right? So Dungeons & Dragons is saying, is there a path to achieve justice without institutions, especially when institutions fail? And Dungeons & Dragons gives us this safe space to explore that concept, to explore that question. And I'm saying that the answer is more valuable than ever, right? The idea of, can we achieve justice beyond the help of an institution, because the institutions refuse to help, refuse to give people what they put, that justice and services are only for some, right? Recently there was debt relief for some Americans, and other Americans, you can go kick rocks. You got too much money, you suck. Government doesn't like you. You're wealthy, go kick rocks, you get nothing. Oh, you have less money? Government in this portion, and you also fit this, and this criteria, you get relief. But the rest of you can go kick rocks. Nobody cares for you. Fairness and relief are only for some, the ones we choose. Which means, is there an adventurer out there? Is there somebody who can bring relief, bring justice, bring services outside of the purview of an institution? Fascinating question that we get to explore every Sunday night, right? And I'm wondering if there's going to be some interesting answers that come up. I think so. All that's my humble opinion. I'd love to hear yours. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing. Have a wonderful millennium.